What if I told you that almost everything the world believes about African marriage is a lie? That the ceremonies you see today, the white gowns, the priests, the rings, the till death do us part vows, are not African at all? And what if I told you that before colonization, African marriages were among the most sophisticated, spiritual, communal, and economically organized relationship systems on Earth, until Europe redefined them? This is the story of how African marriage was whitewashed. Not by accident, but by design. Long before the first European ship touched African shores, marriage in Africa was not just a legal contract. It was cosmology. It was lineage. It was community. It was the binding of destinies and families across generations. But more importantly, it was African. Completely, undeniably African. Across the continent, marriage functioned as a bridge between the seen and the unseen, between ancestors and the unborn, between family and cosmos. There were no white dresses. There were no diamond rings. There were no church vows imported from Rome. African marriage was rooted in values Europeans could not understand: balance, spirituality, communal responsibility, continuity, and sacred harmony. And that is exactly why Europeans had to change it. To understand how African marriage was whitewashed, we must first travel back to what it looked like before colonizers rewrote it. Picture a village at sunrise. Elders sitting beneath a giant iroko tree. Women singing ancient songs. Drums echoing across the compound. Young men preparing gifts, cola nuts, palm wine, mats, livestock, and textiles. Not to buy a bride, but to honor her family's lineage. African marriage began with families, not individuals. It was never a man taking a woman. It was two lineages joining into one powerful river. The Yoruba understood marriage as a gateway between worlds. The Igbo called it Ije Nwanyi, a sacred movement of a woman into a new cosmic role. Among the Akan, marriage was a union of Abujua, the matrilineal clans, ensuring lineage continuity. In the Zulu kingdom, it was Lobola, a symbol of respect, gratitude, unity. Not a transaction but a recognition of value. Across the Sahel, Fulani marriages involved elaborate poetry recitals. In the Great Lakes region, Baganda marriages included communal blessings that tied entire clans together. Ethiopian marriages involved ancient chants dating back to Aksum. In the Congo Basin, Congo marriages invoked ancestor spirits to witness the union. Africa's marriage systems were rich, poetic, layered, and deeply philosophical. But when Europeans encountered these systems, they saw something they feared: a civilization with its own intellectual, moral, economic, and spiritual blueprint. One that did not need Europe. From the 1400s onward, Portuguese missionaries wrote that African marriage was pagan, demonic, or barbaric, simply because it did not resemble Christian marriage. British colonial officers dismissed African weddings as tribal rituals. French administrators outlawed polygynous and matrilineal systems, replacing them with European models. Missionaries attacked what they called heathen unions, insisting that true marriage must involve a priest, a church, Christian vows, Western moral codes. Everything else, they said, was illegitimate. But why? Because European colonization was never just about land. It was about identity. And identity is built on family. If you rewrite how a people marry, you rewrite how they love, inherit, organize, worship, and think. So Europe targeted African marriage deliberately. First, they labeled African customs primitive. Then they made African marriages illegal, unless confirmed by a European priest or colonial court. Then they forced African couples to adopt monogamy based on European theology. Even in societies where extended family structures required polygyny for economic survival. Then they introduced the white wedding, selling it as civilization, purity, and modernity. And Africans, under pressure, began to adopt it. But the biggest whitewashing was not the ceremony. It was the ideology. For example, in many African societies, marriage was communal. Europe changed it to individual. Marriage was spiritual. Europe changed it to religious, Christian only. Marriage was economic and ancestral. Europe changed it to legal and contractual. Marriage centered the extended family. Europe changed it to the nuclear household. Women had communal power and property rights through lineage. Europe replaced these with patriarchal European laws. In fact, Britain imposed the native marriage ordinances across colonies to force African marriages into European frameworks. France imposed Code de l'Indigène, stripping African women of traditional protections in favor of European-style marital control. Missionaries forced couples to marry in churches and banned or demonized African wedding rituals. Even today, millions of Africans believe a marriage is not real unless blessed by a pastor. Not by the ancestors, not by the elders, not by the family, not by the land, not by the community. This is how whitewashing works. Replace the original with an imitation, then shame the original until it disappears. But African marriage never disappeared. It adapted. It survived. It went underground the same way our languages, religions, manuscripts, and kingdoms survived. Look closer, and you will see pieces of African marriage still alive. The kola nut, the bride price symbolism, the pouring of libation, the blessing by elders, the ancestral invocation, the communal feasting, the dancing, drumming, and storytelling, the exchange of gifts, the rites of passage, the family negotiations, the spiritual consultations. These elements outlived colonization. They remind us that Africa's way of building family was never erased, only interrupted. The truth is, African marriage was not whitewashed because it was weak. It was whitewashed because it was strong, too spiritual, too communal, too independent, too connected to ancestors, too protective of lineage, too resistant to European control. Europe could not govern a people whose family system did not bow to European definition. So they changed the definition. They replaced ancestral approval with church approval. They replaced lineage recognition with legal paperwork. They replaced symbolic gifts with diamond rings. They replaced sacred attire with white gowns. They replaced communal rituals with Western pomp. They replaced African cosmology with European theology. And slowly, Africans forgot that the white wedding is only 150 years old on the continent, while African marriage is thousands of years old. But here is the revelation. Africa did not lose its marriage. It was hidden beneath layers of colonial shame. It was masked by European ceremony. It was dressed in white to cover its own colors. And now, African Journal uncovers it. Because African marriage is not primitive. It is not outdated. It is not inferior. It is not waiting for validation from Rome, London, or Paris. African marriage is a living philosophy. It is ancestral technology, a blueprint for family, a system of harmony, a spiritual covenant, a sacred art passed down through generations. Europe tried to whitewash it, but the truth survives in every kola nut broken, every libation poured, every elder's blessing given, every drum played, every family meeting held under the sun. And now that you know this truth, the question is simple. Will you help restore the African story? Will you reject the lies they used to erase us? Will you honor the traditions they feared? If you believe Africa's history deserves to be told, if you believe our marriage, our culture, and our identity should never again be whitewashed, subscribe, because this is African Journal, and this is only the beginning.